All right, welcome to our webinar. This is the 2023 Fall NDE World Language Guest Speaker Series. It's sponsored by NYLA, NDE, and also CLTA, Small Interest Group K-12. Today, we have a special guest, Jen Carson. She speaks 3 languages, right? Are you speaking more than 3 languages?
I only speak 3 well.
Okay, that means you speak more, right? Am I right? Okay, yeah. Wow, you're talented in language. So you're also Jen is also a former president of NASFL, that's National Association of District Supervisor of Foreign Languages. And we are really honored to invite her today. And she also has her special team to support her. Wow. We are very lucky. Thank you for doing this for Nebraska. And the title is Keeping It Real, Bringing the World into the Classroom. That's exactly what we need. And before we start, I want to advertise for our Saturday webinar as well. Our Dr. Christopher Jacobs, he is the Vice President of NYLA. He's going to present on Saturday, but I didn't understand anything dealing with their stubborn problems of foreign language listening comprehension. So if we need some ideas to improve students' listening skills, please don't miss his webinar. Okay, let's focus on Jen's webinar. And Jen, could you please take over? And I think everybody's ready.
Yes, fantastic. I'm showing my screen now. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want this to be a little interactive, but so as people come in, they may be joining in. We can unmute and speak with one another, or just chat in the chat box. But welcome, everyone. You're here because you're curious about how to bring the world into your classroom. Now,
hey, Jen, I'm sorry to interrupt. The screen that we're seeing here is like a script, so
no, it's stop share. That's what I was asking for.
Yep.
Share screen. Does that look familiar? Keeping it real?
That's way better.
Yes.
100%.
Okay. Thank you. So all of us recognize that today's learners, we really want to apply what they're learning in the real world. If they don't perceive their class as real or relevant, they will often shut down and disengage. So today I'll show you just one new and simple way for world language learners to use their language with native speakers. And through Language Testing International's Level Up Village, we connect classrooms in the US and abroad for experiential learning and intercultural communication on a variety of topics ranging from art, ecology, engineering, literature, music, social studies. And for world language learners, we offer new special languages and cultures exchanges on topics that align with curriculum and proficiency levels. So, bonjour, hola, hi, those are my primary languages. I'm Jen Carson. I was a French and Spanish teacher in Norfolk, Virginia, where I live, and that's not Norfolk, Nebraska. I taught FLES, I taught middle school, high school, IB, and then I became a world language coordinator for Virginia Beach. And now I work at Language Testing International, or LTI, spreading the good news about Level Up Village's global virtual exchanges. I also work as adjunct faculty at Old Dominion University, which is in my Norfolk, where I teach world language methods, assessment, school law, because I used to be an attorney, and culturally responsive practices. But like you, I also serve the world languages education field. Currently, I am a board member of the Southern Conference on Language Teaching, and I'm also the Teacher Education and Professional Development Chair for what we call FLAVA. That's our NILA, the Foreign Language Association of Virginia. So now you know me, a little bit about me, and I want to know a little bit about you. I've put on the screen a bunch of different roles that you might have, and you can either unmute or place in the chat. I'm going to pull up the chat so I can see what kind of role do you have in your school or district. And yes, Isabel, you will have access to the slide deck.
Thank you. I am going to, hopefully you can see me. Well, I am the head of the world language department at a high school, and I also teach Spanish 4 and Spanish 3.
Nice. And I know Crystal is at the state level. And Danielle?
I am a high school Spanish teacher. This is my first year at Lincoln Northwest.
Nice.
But before that, I've taught in Fremont, Freeman, Millard North, kind of all over the place.
Yeah. What about you, Celia?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can. Okay. I didn't know I was on. Okay. Yeah. I teach Spanish level 2 at Grand Island Senior High.
Fantastic. And I say Tracy is a French teacher in Maryland, and there'll be a bunch of different people coming in. We've got high school Chinese teacher in Pennsylvania and another Chinese teacher in Dayton, Ohio. Wow. So Man Broadstock, you're teaching Chinese. Is that how I say your name? Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing. So we don't have a lot of university professors here, building administrators, but I'll be talking about things that are interesting to classroom teachers at all levels. We recognize how powerful it is to have authentic interactions with native speakers. Many of you, like I did, studied abroad or came from living abroad. So when we're in those situations, we hear language at a very natural pace, an authentic pace, and it is also in context. So it's not divorced from the reason that you're using the language. And I think that's very important. That's how people naturally process language. And I always wanted to bring these opportunities equitably to all of my students as nearly as possible. And I'm imagining you all feel similarly. And I tried many ways to facilitate these types of authentic interactions in my classroom. And then later when I was in the district, I invited speakers I met randomly to come speak with my students. For example, one time I ran into a man, I recognized his accent as Haitian Creole, and I asked him if he would come speak with my students. He was a car salesman, and he took a day off work, and he came and spoke with my students. That was just one of many people that I went up to just randomly and asked them. But again, I'm in a place like Norfolk, Virginia, where I have access to people who speak different languages. I also would arrange, and maybe you do too, to have my students go to a restaurant and order in the target language. We went to Mexican, Moroccan, French, Peruvian, all kinds of cuisine that we have here. But again, that was just once a year. So that wasn't a sustained opportunity for all of the students to interact. And also, there are many places in the US, maybe where you live, where it's very difficult to find these kinds of opportunities to either bring native speakers into your classroom or to bring your students out to engage with native speakers. And interacting over time is even more powerful in terms of the kinds of linguistic gains, and gains not just in proficiency, but also in intercultural competence. And I'm going to show you some of the exchange options I've tried as an instructor. I really love ePals for pen pals, and I love using Flip for video exchanges. And both of these are free and easy. They're asynchronous, so they don't happen at the same time. With ePals, though, I found that the lag between the messages was very frustrating for my students. I loved Flip because students wanted to see one another when they were conversing, but working with other teachers abroad is great if you're both diligent and enthusiastic. And sometimes I found that the exchange just fizzled and it wouldn't be sustainable across a semester, let's say. I've tried synchronous exchanges as well using Skype and Zoom, and these were tricky too for different reasons. The time zones, because I was in general trying to connect with speakers in continental Europe, like France and Spain. A lot of times it ended up being a bit of a free-for-all. Maybe I didn't plan as well as I should have. Some students didn't know what to say, or some other students, they dominated the conversations. And then the other ones didn't get a chance to speak. And I'm wondering whether some of this resonates with you and the kinds of things you've tried to do. Travel overseas is wonderful. I've done that. I took some of my French students up to Quebec, and it can be costly and time consuming. We tried to cut that down by using a bus to travel to Quebec rather than flying to Europe, but still it limited, well, certain schools I was in actually limited student travel and didn't permit it, but it still was limiting to some students who couldn't fundraise enough money to participate. And I hate having students feel left out. Hosting an exchange student, I've done that in my home, and it can be a wonderful experience, but it really does limit the variety of accents that students can hear and the perspectives that they might gain by interacting with multiple native speakers. And I want you right now, just take a moment to add what you have tried either in the chat or you can unmute and speak. I want to know, what have you tried? What has really worked well for you? And maybe what challenges you may have faced?
I can share an experience I had with my Spanish 4.
Yes.
In the beauty lesson, we were talking about the importance of poetry and literature. Why is that important? And I contacted, I was following this professor, literature professor in Venezuela, and she replied and she talked to my students about, she prepared a lesson just for them. And after that, she had, because she has an Instagram page and she posts very simple, very relevant content. And it's not that she doesn't use those difficult words. So every week they had to read what she posts, select something that resonated with them, and then reply, because she always has a question at the end. And then I contacted her and she shared a lesson with my class.
I love that. That takes a lot on your part to reach out to someone like that. So I would imagine a novice teacher might not have the confidence to jump out and do that, but it must have been really a transformative experience for your students.
Absolutely. I was lucky because she retired the year before, so I was lucky she had more time in her hands.
Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful, Isabel. And did anybody else try any other type of exchange? This is my giving wait time. I don't want to jump in if there's anybody who wants to share. Okay. So Level Up Village provides many advantages for teachers, for administrators, students, developing global citizenship and critical thinking skills that align with social emotional learning and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that are really big, at least where I live. And Level Up Village fosters self-reflection, which is extremely important to me because it leads to lifelong learners who can set goals and regulate their own learning. And our global virtual exchanges incorporate the ISTE standards, they're for technology, but also 21st century skills, and of course, the National World Readiness Standards for language learning. And they really build programs because they excite students. They really generate so much excitement. Students will tell their friends that they participated in something like this, and then it will slowly build your program because students will recognize that they'll have an opportunity to interact with native speaker peers about topics that are of interest to them, not just talking to one another. How old are you? Well, I'm 13 too, but talking to somebody outside of the classroom, and also not always just hearing the particular accent of the teacher as the more native teacher. So you may know Language Testing International because we administer ACTFL's proficiency tests like APPLE and OPI, and you may use our assessments to benchmark student growth or to use as evidence for the seal of biliteracy. And in 2018, just right before COVID, LTI acquired Level Up Village, which was focused at that time primarily on STEM exchanges with Anglophone Africa. So we revamped the digital platform, and it is now FERPA and COPA compliant, which means we do not collect any student identifiable student data. And this is very important to parents and to administrators. And our mission is really simple. We want to bring students together from across the world to collaborate, to learn with and from one another. So in general, with the languages and cultures exchanges, the students overseas are learners of English. And that is the draw from that for them in collaborating with your classroom. And our exchanges touch every one of the 5 National World Readiness Standards, from communication clearly, but connections and comparisons. And then the 2 that are much more difficult to provide in the classroom. In our exchanges, students have multiple opportunities to use the target language to investigate cultural practices and products, to understand perspectives in their own culture and also in the target culture. And they use language and behavior to interact and collaborate in the greater world. So cultures and communities are usually the most difficult for teachers to incorporate. And in the case of cultures, it's often incorporating it using the language that is the more difficult piece. So we have still our STEM and STEAM legacy courses, and they are available for English language learners. And also we use them for elementary dual language immersion programs in states like Delaware and Utah that have a really large systematic program of dual language immersion. They're piloting statewide implementation of Level Up Village to support both world language and dual language immersion programs. And many districts, like the one I used to be the coordinator in Virginia Beach, they're extending that dual language immersion into the middle school, and they're using the languages and cultures exchanges to infuse culture with language practice for students who are exiting those elementary programs. So they're in 6th grade through 12th. So they start out working in STEM and STEAM, and then they move through to the languages and cultures. And I wanted to show you a little video. So I'm going to ask you, when I turn it on, I like get goosebumps every time I watch it. but I want to make sure that you can hear it accurately. So if you can give me a thumbs up or thumbs down when I first started, let me know. This relates primarily to the arts and sciences, or STEM and STEAM exchanges, but it easily describes the languages and cultures exchanges as well, because it's showing those connections that are made between individual students, which leads to powerful learning. And that's how we develop global citizens who have the skills to work cooperatively with peers in other cultures. And they will have to do that in higher ed and also in the global workforce. So here's the video.
Since 2012, we're very proud to say we've helped over 20,000 students achieve global communication and collaboration through our Level Up Village courses. Level Up Village breaks down classroom walls by connecting students around the world through our STEAM courses. Not only do they communicate and collaborate with one another, they also make a friend, and they learn about the cultural differences between the two countries.
The things that they discussed, the realizations that they made were just amazing. And there weren't things that a teacher could stand up in front of class and just teach students. It was something that had to happen because it had the context of a relationship.
Through our proprietary technology, we've ensured that this is a safe place for students to share information with one another.
It was really nice to see your video, and it's sad that this is our last one because it's so cool to see what it's like across the world in a completely different country.
The teachers are able to monitor the performance of the students and approve every piece of work before it's shared between the two classrooms. They're taught how to create a project-based learning environment, have their students thinking critically and creatively in the classroom. The students themselves get to work in this project-based collaborative environment, and it's more than just textbooks and papers and pencils.
The impact that Level Up Village has had on our school and on our students has been remarkable. I personally, in my 25 years of education, have not seen any education that has so truly matched a STEM curriculum with a global aspect to it in such an impactful way.
So I hope you all had some goosebumps too. Just seeing the students and how they are transformed by this type of global experience. Now I'm going to try to move on to my next slide, but you never know if it will start again. So, yep, I knew it. I'm just going to peer over my screen and see if I can move. Yes. Okay. Our languages and cultures exchanges, they are newer, but they're just as impactful as those arts and sciences one. Each of these 8-week courses includes 4 cooperative tasks and 1 reflective task. And they all start with an introduction. Students are provided with a very detailed prompt to introduce themselves, where they live, go to school, what they like to do, the kinds of things that in the first 2 or 3 years of learning in your classroom, they are comfortable discussing. And in this 1 to 2 minute video, students are also asked to post questions to their partners abroad. So that elicits some responses from their partners in the partner classroom. But it also, as you know about proficiency levels, being able to ask questions pushes students from novice into the intermediate realm. So that is very important. Students can record directly on the platform, or they can use any device. They can use their own phone, a tablet, Chromebook, whatever you have in school. And then once they submit their video into our digital platform, it's scrubbed of geographic tags, so it is safe. Teachers can then review and approve the videos, and they might be reviewing it for cultural reflection. They might be reviewing it for language production. And they also will be reviewing it to ensure that students are not divulging their surname or any identifiable information like a Twitter handle or X handle. The following week, after these are approved, the students can view all of the videos from the partner class. So if you're talking about classes of 30 students, they would have 30 1 to 2 minute videos to watch that are about that particular topic. Then the students will choose at least 3 to respond to, and they'll record another 1 to 2 minute video of their response. And this is important. The teacher needs to determine that the student has heard and understood the questions that were posed, and that the student is appropriately answering, both in English and in the target language during that type of task. And finally, some of the best parts are when the students watch responses to their own initial videos. So that interaction is one task, which takes about 2 weeks of 1 to 2 hours per week in your class. So depending if you're block or bell or 4x4. The next tasks after that introductory task, they focus on the products and practices related to the particular topic. So it might be food or climate change or festivals or people in our lives or where we live. The students will have to investigate their own local or home culture so that they can share about it with their partners. And then they'll gain the information from their partners about the partner's culture. Novice high students in Spanish 2, they may talk about something like friends and family. But when you have students in our most advanced level of exchange, that the students are in an AP or an IB program, they may discuss something like climate change or something that is more global in scope. So these are not a one-to-one exchange like a pen pal. I wanted to show you just one, this one is in English, but it is a very typical introductory video. I wasn't sure if some of you would speak Spanish or Chinese or English. And so since we all can agree that we know enough English to watch this, this is what we'll watch. We'll first see an Anglophone student in the United States, then we'll see the response video from a student in Latin America who is an English language learner.
Hi, my name's Adele. I'm from rural Massachusetts and I'm in 10th grade. I live with my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, and my dog. In the fall, I like to play soccer with my high school and my friends. And in the winter, I just joined ski team, so I get to ski a lot in the winter with my friends. In the springtime, I like to go outside and run. I like to go to the beach with my friends because where we live in Massachusetts, we live really close to the beach. So we go out on the boat, we'll go tubing, just hang out at the beach a lot. Also in the summer, me and my family like to go up to Lake George, New York, which is in the Adirondacks of New York. It's a really rural area, so there's not a lot of people around, but it's really peaceful and quiet. When we're up there, we like to go out on the boat a lot, and on the boat we can go up different cliffs and jump off the cliffs. We can go tubing, and that's a lot of fun. Me and my siblings try to push each other off the tube while we're out tubing. We also like to go camping sometimes, so we'll go for a few nights, and it's a lot of fun just being out on the islands. We'll also just hang around at the house and go swimming. And yeah, just spend our time up there. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, nice to meet you, Adele. That was a great video. It's something similar to what I like to do. Well, I'm from Guatemala and I live in San Pedro. So I like music, sports, recording videos, and more. Well, I like to play soccer too with my team or friends, and sometimes other sports, such as basketball and volleyball. Also, I like to swim in the lake. That's very cool and very fun. If you don't know, San Pedro is a beautiful place where we find different cultures, languages, food, places, and more. Well, I hope it was interesting. And this is a little about me, and bye-bye.
So now that you've seen one of these introductory videos, what impression do you have? Is this something that would seem really interesting to students you have in your class?
Well, I can start. I think it's, first of all, the access to native pronunciation is gonna be immense. And also it's more relatable because like you said, they're normally I'm not as cool as these guys. So the engagement will improve too.
Thanks for sharing, Isabel. Anybody else?
I do like how it combines the asynchronous aspect, but at the same time getting to hear native speakers and, you know, getting some kind of a video or audio recording. That I think is really huge in developing multiple skills and multiple modalities.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. And this was very purposeful. One of the reasons it's asynchronous, besides the time zones, is that we're thinking about the social emotional aspect. Students are language learners. They are nervous. If they don't wish to show their face, they showed many visuals that were super creative. So you could show visuals and just do a voiceover, for example, or students could practice many times or write a script so that they feel comfortable and they could record. And then if they don't like it, then not submit it. Again, when they're watching the videos from the other side, it may be difficult to understand when it's in Spanish or French. And so the students may need to watch them multiple times, maybe at different speeds, to truly comprehend everything. And when you're truly speaking interpersonally, there is not that time for students to reflect. Now, these videos are not downloadable, and after a year, all of the videos are destroyed because we are very concerned about safety. But for the process of viewing the videos, students will have multiple opportunities, as many as they wish. Okay, I'm going to try to move on without having them see it. It doesn't work. So I'm leaning over the screen. There we go. So as you can see, this is not a one-to-one exchange. It's not Jen is talking to Danielle and Mon is speaking with Celia. It's rather the two classes are exchanging. And so that gives students an opportunity to develop multiple connections across a series of tasks. They hear so many accents, they really get to acquire multiple perspectives about culture. And we use the feedback that we gain from participants to improve the user experience. For example, our newest innovation is a teacher task. So just like what you saw, before the student exchange begins, we have teachers now record their own introductory video for the partner teacher. And the best way it works is if I'm a teacher of Spanish in the US and I'm talking to a teacher in Ecuador who is teaching English to her Spanish-speaking students, then I would record mine in Spanish and he or she would record theirs in English, because we want to give a sense of what it's like for a student in the US who's learning a language, maybe nervous. The student in Latin America, for example, is learning English. So it really gives teachers a sense of what the students are going through. And it also builds a relationship between the teachers, because we found that the best exchanges are the ones in which the teachers feel really connected. I mean, we do monitor and they can chat with one another in the digital platform directly. And when they do that, they'll receive an email to come back to the platform. And they might use this chat feature to say, you know, a hurricane passed by, we'll be 2 days late for the sending in our videos or something like that. Or we've loved the exchange so much, let's write our own test and leave the platform open for another couple of weeks so our students can do an additional task. All that can be negotiated with the partner teacher. But to build that relationship where you can really say, I haven't gotten my videos on time and my students are in class now and they've got nothing to respond to. You need to build that, and this is the first place to build it. And also, I found that a lot of teachers have not kept up their language or their connections maybe in the places that they've studied overseas, and this can be a form of professional development for the teachers, and it can, you know, build a lifelong connection. So I'm showing you here one of our one-page course descriptions for typical languages and cultures exchange, and we currently have 9, but we're developing new ones all the time. Sometimes the ideas come to us, and sometimes the ideas come from a teacher who wants to do a special exchange. Maybe they want to do it about soccer or about fiestas y tradiciones. So we start with topics that are based upon typical curriculum for each level of study, and each task has a series of detailed prompts. The students really know what is expected of them, and there are can-do statements that are derived from the necessful, actful, intercultural communicative can-dos that teachers can use also as learning objectives. We offer teacher analytic rubrics to assist teachers in scoring, but we also include some student self-assessment rubrics. And I particularly like this because I'm a huge proponent of Linguafolio. So you can use these self-assessment rubrics the same way to develop your students' self-regulation and metacognition. You can even create a bit of a dossier of their work and their reflections using this. And I'll talk about later some journaling. So if you wish to extend a lesson, for example, students can add journaling. I've had some teachers who wish to keep their classroom, instead of the 90% plus of the target language that ACTFL recommends, they prefer to keep it in 100%. And in that case, they have the students sometimes write or record a video in the target language on the tasks that are in English. So that's something to think about. And you'll find that as students are practicing their listening and speaking about topics that interest them, they start to gain intercultural competence and also confidence in their ability to express themselves to a native speaker and be understood. And I really think you'll find that these types of global experiences really not only build your program, but they motivate students to pursue higher levels of language study, because they'll notice that the students on the other side, maybe they speak better English than they speak the target language, for example, and that's really powerfully motivating peer-to-peer motivation, you know. So here are those levels and topics we're offering in this particular school year, and you can fit them easily in your pacing. Think about your semester.
I can eat while I.
Okay, I was gonna say, there's not enough of that food for both of us, so.
So these are the types of exchanges that can fit easily in your pacing. We offer them in cohorts, and I'll talk a little bit about that later so you can understand how that would work for you in your classroom. If you've ever administered the LTI's Apple exam, then you'll notice some of these topics. They'll be familiar. And again, as I said, in our level 3, we really look to the AP themes and IB goals to craft courses that naturally embed timeframes and moods, like subjunctive mood and conditional mood. So that comes naturally through talking about these particular types of topics. And teachers have found that level of village exchanges, they lead to better scores on external assessments like the Apple, but also AP and IP exams. So when you look at these levels, think about them as a minimum, not a maximum. We just want to ensure that your students have a sufficient proficiency to express themselves, to be successful. And so they need enough vocabulary on the particular topic, and they need sufficient grammatical structures that are necessary to express themselves and express themselves confidently. So even though students have learned about food in level 1, it's not until level 2, when you're spiraling in more information about food, that the students really feel confident to express themselves. And that's why we start after the equivalent of novice high or 1 year of high school credit bearing. And when you see this also, it's naturally differentiating. So if you have in your class some heritage speakers or some students that are intermediate low, but the balance of the students are novice high, you can still select a novice high or A2 in the CEFR. You can select that proficiency level. And your students that are high flyers and they're a higher proficiency level, their discourse can be higher because they're sending and responding to native speakers. So you really don't have to worry about that. You just don't want to select something like future plans and professions with a group of students that does not know how to speak in the future tense in your language. I do know a teacher who ran Our Favorite Foods last year with her students in a dual enrollment program. So that's, if you're not familiar with that, that is a college level, usually community college level course that is taught in a high school. And the students receive college credit for it. So it targets about intermediate mid. And instead of saying, I like pizza, which is what my level 2s might say, or yo quiero tacos or whatever, her students were able to say things that were more complex. Things like, I'm a pescatarian. I prefer gluten-free foods because I have a stomach ache when, so it can be really complex and a much larger volume of discourse as well. But because you're working again with native speakers, so that it's supported on both sides, that higher level of discourse. And so you'd be surprised, but this particular teacher is going to run the same exchange with the same level class in October. So it really did work for them. So that is something to think about, that when you're teaching a level 3, you have access to all of the topics at the level 1 and level 2 here, novice high and intermediate low. And before I move on, does anyone have any particular questions? Okay, I'm trying to check the chat. I'm trying to check your faces. So I have a
question.
Oh yeah, please.
But I can wait till the end. I was looking at the program, and the program with Level Up Village starts in October. Does it last the whole year, or how does that? If I signed up, is October to October?
No, it's always 8 weeks.
Oh, it's 8 weeks. Sorry,
8 weeks. So you can place it. It runs in September and October. So you can place it depending if you started school this year in August or September. And then it would finish in time for you to finish up exams and all that sort of thing. And then we have other cohorts. We call it in the spring, but in general, it's February and March. But that's a really great question. And we provide a lot of support. So this is typical of the detailed instructions. Someone who would be registering for the October 9th cohort that's coming up, you would see your deadline. That's September 22nd. And the reason there's a deadline, we need to find out about you, the age of your students, how many students in the class, what topic do you prefer, what is their proficiency level? And then we need to schedule you for a live onboarding session. So 1 hour, it's on Zoom, but to learn how to use the platform. And I find the platform to be super easy and intuitive, but still, that's a moment for you to gather with the other teachers and receive training. Then the teachers will access the online classroom. They'll be able to log in. Maybe you get student permission if that's required by your school. You can add in your roster of students and get all ready to go so that you can do your teacher task. And it's only when the teacher task, that introductory video, is completed that the students can come on. And that is the October 9th date. That's when the students come on. So we have some other special things coming up that I wanted to share with you. So in addition to the regular cohorts that I showed you,
Desde luego no sabéis conducir, eh?
We have this new one that this is the first time we're announcing it, in fact. And you can see it's in Spanish because the presentation was just done with a consortium of schools called International House, and it includes schools in Mexico and Chile and Peru. And they asked for a special course on the topic of fiestas y tradiciones. And what's interesting about this one is it will run at all 3 proficiency levels. So if you have students in Spanish 2 and Spanish 4, you can run them in those same, you can run 2 separate exchanges, but it's the same topic. Because again, you can raise the level of discourse because they're native speakers. And it's interesting in other ways as well, because it starts in October 30th. And we will start messaging on social media about this, but I wanted to announce it today with Nebraska. And it ends on January 26th. So there'll be 2 breaks. And normally we don't have breaks baked into the exchange. It's usually just 8 weeks. Sometimes in the spring, we might separate out a week for the spring break. And teachers can negotiate with one another to, I have a break for 2 weeks, you have 1 week, let's take 2 weeks off. So that can be done with your partner teacher. But here they have built in that break because this is what works best for the teachers in their group. And so this may really appeal to you because it's starting at the end of October and it's going through to January 26th. And at least the way the semesters run where I am, that would be the end of semester 1. But even if it continues to semester 2, it can be an experience that your students have that bridges both semesters. So think about that if you're a teacher of Spanish.
I have another question, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, por favor.
So my students are would be in level 3, and what about the workload or the tasks they have to complete? Is it reasonable plus the work that I have to cover in my classroom?
Yeah, so think about it this way. It takes about 1 to 2 hours a week. So depending on if you have 90-minute blocks and you meet 2 or 3 times a week, it would be 1 block. And if you run in bells, it might be 1 bell, 2 bells. Some of the tasks can be assigned at home. So many times we'll have teachers go over the initial task with the students and they record in the classroom, and then all the responses, all the viewing of the responses of the initial videos from the partner side, your students' responses, and then viewing the other students' responses. That can all take place at home. And it depends on whether your students have access to Wi-Fi, whether they have devices, whether you're teaching middle or high school. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind. Also, you will have to approve all of the videos. And if you have 30 students and they all record all the way up to 2 minutes, which doesn't happen all the time, but if it were, that would be 60 minutes that you would have to view per week. But these tasks should be tasks that are taking the place of other tasks. So you can fit it into your curriculum. You might need to adjust pacing a little bit, but when you put it in, it's not giving you more work. It's taking the place of an empty interpersonal task like shoulder partners and converting it into one with native speakers. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and it's pretty reasonable. 2 hours a week, it's not terrible.
Right, and it's not, and some teachers do it with all their classes, and they do it both first and second semester. Now that would be a lot of work. I would not recommend that. But for teachers of French, and I, as I said before, was a French and Spanish teacher, I'm excited that I was able to negotiate a pilot with the Education Ministry of Senegal. And so these are French speakers. It may be their L2. Their home language may be Wolof, but they are French speakers, and that is the language of instruction in their school. And I'm really excited because, and I was saying this before, with the cohorts, we're often running them at different times because we need to adjust to the different calendars. For example, the schools in the Southern Cone, schools in Argentina, run at a different calendar than schools in Mexico, for example. And so do the schools in Senegal. They run on a different calendar. And so they are running with the same topics we're running in the October 9th cohort for Spanish, but they are running starting October 23rd, and that will last 8 weeks. So it will end in December. I do believe these were very popular. We announced them at the American Association of Teachers of French convention in Quebec in July. And so a lot of the teachers were excited. So we may only have 1 or 2 left, but I'm excited to see this as a pilot because I, of course, believe it will turn out extremely well. And then we will be running these for French speakers throughout, in the spring and again in the fall. We'd like to expand to other French-speaking places as well, including Belgium, French-speaking cantons in Switzerland, France. And so it's just little by little. We're only 1 year old with the languages and cultures. But we really do want to grow our language community. So if you have a colleague in another country, perhaps somebody that you've connected with to do a flip exchange, who's really enthusiastic and somebody you can collaborate with, then you can invite them for a limited time to participate in an exchange. And we will not charge your partner. It will be at no cost to them. And usually the international partners do pay. So that will hopefully raise our network. For example, last year we ran several exchanges with other countries, including France, Italy, and Taiwan. And we're running another with a Chinese-speaking teacher again in September. So, and I'm speaking specifically to the Chinese teachers that are here. If you have contacts in China or in Taiwan that would like to partner with you, we can get it done. It's very easy. You would have access to our curriculum. We would support everything you do, provide you with the training, and then the access to the secure digital platform. If you don't believe you have a partner, you may very well have access to one. I don't know if Nebraska has any state level memoranda of understanding with other countries, but I know in my home state of Virginia, we have them with Switzerland, Taiwan, France. And so we have some teachers from Virginia who will be participating, for example, with their partner in the Académie des Reims in France, a partner that was given to them free through this MOU. But also Sister Cities International is another way. If you have a sister city with the particular town that you reside in, that may be a way that you can gain a partner. And there may be other ways that I have not thought of. So I wanted to share some testimonials with you. These are from teachers of different grade levels and different languages. So you could really see how impactful these global experiences have been for the teachers and for their students. So here is one, and you will have access to this slide deck so you can read it at your leisure. But here, Shelley, who's in New Jersey, is explaining how powerful it was for her to embed culture through an exchange with a class in Argentina. And this had been something she had struggled with. And in fact, in Shelley's case, she ran exchanges with all of her classes. And in some instances, she paid for them herself because she cared so deeply and she was so moved by the experiences she had in connecting with a teacher, but also her students had. And so she really felt strongly about providing it to all of her students. Here is another teacher, Gina Gallo from Connecticut, and she is an Italian teacher. And she really thought her students had a lot of fun. They thought it was doing something real and authentic because this is how they engage with others in their own personal life. They post asynchronously on Instagram, for example, and TikTok. And so this just felt really authentic and, again, fun. Here are some testimonials we had from students. As I was saying before, it can be really motivating for students. They make their own comparisons about the cultures and the language, but they're spurred to work harder to gain higher levels of language proficiency when they see their partners speaking so well in English. They also gain something else that I really like, which is recognizing that they have to speak at a careful pace. They have to make sure that their face is facing as they're recording so that they're understood by somebody who has difficulty understanding English. Thanks, Danielle. And then finally, this one I really love because this is from Nancy, and I've had a chance to speak with her myself. She lives in upstate New York, and she is a fourth grade teacher who did this in English, one of those STEM exchanges. She said, you have to take a leap of faith, and it makes all the difference in the world. And part of her story is that she ended up connecting with the students in that particular town and getting together all of the students in her entire school, not just the fourth graders and her class, but collecting money so that they could donate a book to the library, which was the fundraiser in that school in Kenya. And they loved it. They picked a book that was written by somebody in their small village so that it was reflective of life in upstate New York. So it was a real cultural moment for all of the students in the entire school. And again, several of her colleagues are now pursuing other different types, not just STEM, but one is doing an art exchange, one of the art teachers in elementary school. So really so many ways to really bring this to students at all grade levels. So I'm sure you're thinking about cost. How can I afford this? Well, those arts and sciences, like the one that Nancy participated in, those cost $600 for 8 weeks. Sometimes they're 4 weeks. It depends. Some of them are on social studies, topics like politics and social media we have from middle school and high school learners. But for you, for language teachers, the cost is only $300. And that is really affordable. If you're talking about 30 students in a class, that's basically $10 per student for an 8-week experience.
I have a question. I just signed up. I filled out the form.
Okay.
I'm very excited because this is, most of all, I'm interested in the real contact, more exposure to native speakers, which most of my students don't have. Anyway, this is 300 and nothing else, right? That includes registration and, okay.
But that's a good question. And money is an issue. And as a teacher, I wrote many grant proposals so that I could get things.
Yeah,
What
I am
you
the
get.
sponsor for whoever is listening. I am the sponsor of the Spanish Honor Society, and the
Okay.
Spanish Honor Society is going to sponsor this project. So it's
Oh,
really reasonable, $10 per student. I have some students who could not afford this, so let's see. I will provide feedback after we're done.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. We'll keep in touch. Some teachers, they are allowed to dun students. Some private schools, these fees are passed on to the parents. Others, there are many other ways, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you get the curriculum, and what you see at the left is the one page. You'll get a complete and ample teacher's guide in PDF form that gives you background information and guiding questions to use with your students. And that's also available to you on your digital platform when you get your dashboard. If we have time after questions, I'll go ahead and show you the digital platform. You get so all of the curriculum, the resources, the can-do statements, the rubric. You also get unless you're in the Bring Your Own Partner campaign, you get your global partner. And then you have access to this collaboration platform. And you can, as I said before, you can create your own tasks and add to it. And we're happy to leave the platform open if you ask for an additional 2 weeks to complete one additional task. As you can see on the right, that shows you what the platform looks like. And it's very
I'm sorry.
appealing.
So what about support if I have questions or I'm struggling with something?
Absolutely.
Do we have 24-hour support?
Yes. And we have support in English and in Spanish. We have chatbot support. We have human support. You will not lack for support. And we're actual people. It's a very small organization as companies go. And so you will get to know us. You'll reach out to me or my coworker Alejandro, and you'll say, Jen, I can't do this. Right? These are the ways that you can get funding. And I particularly added this here so that you would have access because they are hyperlinked. There are ESSER funds. You may use ESSER funds for this. I know that the time is running out. We're sharing your plan for the usage of ESSER funds, but it is not until the end of this month. So that is something to do. Also, a lot of PTAs, and in the case of private schools, PTOs, they offer support. All you have to do is ask them, tell them about what you're doing. A lot of school districts have educational foundations, and you may or may not know that. And that's what a lot of people do where I live, is that a lot of these public school districts are quite large because they're county-wide, and they have small, but I mean, $300 covers it. What's fantastic is on September 6th, ACTFL and its Language Connects Foundation came out with a micro grant program. And it's being sponsored by Language Connects Foundation and Vista Higher Learning, the publisher. These are $300 each, so it's perfect. I have teachers going through AATSP, teachers going through AATF, AATG, whatever their AAT is, you can do for Japanese, they can do their AATJ. Donors Choose, surprisingly, is very successful. I've had teachers say, I want to do it, I have no money. They go on Donors Choose. A week later, they not only funded their own, but for their whole world language department. So that is an option. And we have a page, here's the hyperlink, where we have a list of all, and hyperlink out. So it'll list ESSER and Donors Choose, but a bevy of other opportunities for funding. And so all you need to do is click there, go to the page and click on, and it will tell you about DODEA funding if you're in a military connected school, that sort of thing. Any questions about the options for funding?
That is very tempting to have the whole department, because we cannot cover the whole department, but that's very
Well, you have
tempting.
to start somewhere, Isabel. I mean, consider it a pilot. And then, you start talking about in the school, sharing out the experience your students have had. And, it grows. So I'll take you to the digital platform. My question here is, and Crystal may, if I get too excited, she may have to cut me off, make sure that I hit my time properly. But do let me know with your fingers, because I was having some issues earlier sharing out. If you could just show me that I've gone to the digital platform. Do you see the platform? Okay, Danielle.
Yes.
Danielle sees it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some teacher credentials so that I can enter as a teacher. And this is what you would do, but then you would press that keep me signed in, and then you'd always be, it would always be available to you. And I am going to grab my email address and put it here. I'm going to grab my password and place it here. And then I'll say, keep me signed in. And that way you don't need to do that every single time. Thank you, Gosha. So these are all the courses that I have. And I'll take you to my Spanish 5. So some of those, that might be a good one too. I'll take you to this one then. And this is my dashboard. You can see my partner teacher here. If I click, I can see details about my partner teacher, what school she's at, how old are the students, the kind of information you provide when you register. But I can hide it so I can see where I can text. So this is where I was speaking before. You can chat with your partner. We don't want you going off on WhatsApp. Then we don't know what's going on, or whether you've negotiated with one another to add another task or to take a break of a couple of days. So here you just chat there, and it will send an email to your school email. And you have some quick and easy tabs up here, but you also have at that first page, the dashboard, you can toggle between pending, completed, and all for your tasks. When we saw that introductory task with the 2 students speaking in English, I can look here, I can see what the task is. I can click directly here to look at the student submissions, or I can go up here to look at the student submissions. So there's lots of ways of doing it. And these tasks alternate. So the first is in English, the second in the target language, third in English, the fourth in the target language, and the fifth is a reflection task that you do in your classroom. Because we know, and I think it was somebody said in the chat, that it is that processing where the students think about the experience they had, what they noticed, the comparisons they made, and when they think about it, that's when the learning really sticks. And so I suggest to any teacher that is doing this, you might want to incorporate any journaling that you were doing about topics, to be journaling, depending on the level in English or in the target language, to be journaling about this experience so that they can collect and then reflect on those thoughts. But here you have the tasks, but also your to-do list. So you will see whether you need to remind students to do something. It's very helpful. There's not a chance where anything would slip through the cracks. You can also toggle to the task view. And in that case, that one that we saw, this is the prompt that the student would have seen. So politely greet, introduce yourself, don't use your surname, describe your school, town, what you like to do, your friends, family, and ask your partner some questions about their interests. And it's very specific. when it's due, and then when they watch their partner class of videos, the videos are going to be in English if the task is in English. That means the responses and the prompts for the responses will also be in English. When it's in the target language, as you can see here, it is completely in the target language. Now, this was a more advanced class, so there are several options. If you have a more novice class, let's say Spanish 2 or French 2 or Chinese 2, you may wish to project the prompt in the front of the class and break it down with the students so you can ensure that they really understood what is expected of them. And then you can see all of your students. You can see their profile. So I'll click on Ava, and I can see what Ava has done, what she needs to do, and it's visually very easy to access. I can take actions on her videos, but I also can view from the student perspective. Oh, now I need to have a new password. Well, I won't do that, but let me assure you that you can view everything exactly from the student perspective. In that case, when the students are on their dashboard, they see what looks like an Instagram feed of many different videos. So if there are 30 students on the other side, they'll be seeing 30 different videos. They can watch them all multiple times and just respond to at least 3. So I'm going to click, instead of pending, I'd like to click all so you can see all of the videos that I have. And if I click this one, which I can see is an English introductory task, because the name of the prompt is in English, I can look at my student's video and then I can see the prompt. So it is very easy for me to score with this teacher analytic rubric because I know exactly what the student was supposed to do. And I can leave some really detailed and timely feedback for my students. And I can toggle quickly to the next student so I can get through all of my students in a quick fashion. When I'm looking at, and so that is a submission, that's the initial video in the task. The second week of a task is the response portion. And then I can look at my students' video and the partner video that they viewed. And that way I can be sure that my student understood everything, particularly the questions that were asked. If you're concerned maybe that there are some students in your class who won't get a lot of responses, what I've told teachers is you can assign one particular student to each student. So in this case, I always respond to Crystal, but then every task I respond to 2 other different people, always. And so then I can build a continuing relationship with one person while gaining the, interaction with all of the other different people. And here we have resources, and we have blogs, videos, and written resources for teachers to support them. Taking a while to load, probably because it knows that we have a webinar. Okay, that is taking me too long. I'll close this out. Okay. That is my wait time. Yes, Crystal, that's a really good question. So when the student is in the student view, the student will have access to the particular teacher student resources. For example, the students will have the written instructions of how to use the platform, the digital platform. They'll also have videos, and they are videos created by young people about how best to use the digital platform, not just how to do it, but what's the best way to hold your phone. So now it's finally loaded. You can see we have tips, blogs, necessful, actful, can-do statements, which everyone in necessful appreciates, teacher agreement, FAQs, schedules, written instructions for teachers, the teacher analytic rubrics, the student self-assessment rubrics, letters for parents, and then those videos I was talking about. I'll see if it'll play.
An area that gives you the best lighting so people can see you clearly. Tip 2, speak clearly.
So that is really empowering for students. When you're thinking about our students are between grades 6 and 12, if you can assign a video like that as a flipped classroom so that they're ready to go when they hit the platform, they will really feel as if you're respecting them as a learner. And I wanted to know, this is when I wanted to save time for whether you had particular questions. I know a lot of people had questions during the presentation, so I'm happy to either pull out of this and show you on the digital platform how something works. Yes, so Crystal, each particular topic has a different teacher analytic rubric and a different student self-assessment rubric. Again, that is saving teachers time.
Yes, I understand, because we all come from classroom, how much time it takes to create a rubric from scratch for teachers. It is really good to include all those rubrics. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Now, I know Isabel doesn't have any questions because she just registered, but is there anyone that has any questions, particularly about those newer options of the...
Not yet. I'm sure I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Does anybody have a question about the Senegal exchange or the Bring Your Own Partner campaign?
Is that part of the language program, of the $300 program? Or is that different? Sorry.
Oh, yes. So it's $300 for any of those. So for example, if you were a teacher of Chinese, it's $300. And then the prompts would alternate between English, Mandarin Chinese, English, Mandarin Chinese, and they would be in the language written, and then the students would create their videos and respond to videos in that language. All the same cost.
Is it per class or per teacher?
I like that. It is per 30 students. So
Okay.
we've had some instances where teachers have very small classes, and so they would have 2 classes of 15, and then they can share the teacher credentials and do it that way. But we've also had teachers who have very, very large classes, and so they've had to split their class and have 2 exchanges, let's say 2 exchanges of 20. But we charge it basically by the exchange, but it ends up generally being by the class. So if Danielle's teaching 3 blocks of Spanish 2, then that would be 3 separate exchanges if she has about 28 kids. Well, I've shared my contact information, and I will share my slide deck with all of you. If you have any questions now or later, you can always reach me and my colleague. You can reach me at J. Carson. I think it's on the flyer, but I'm going to put it in the chat as well.
Thank you so much for the great resources and great ideas to engage students. This is pretty fun. Yeah.
I appreciate
cool.
that you give us this opportunity, Crystal, and to provide this opportunity to all the teachers, not only in Nebraska, but throughout the US.
Thank you so much.
So the recording will be ready on this website within a week, because I need to work with technical, support to put on the website. So if you need the recording, it will be there, and the website is in the chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this webinar. Any other questions?
I have a question. I'm teaching Chinese and I'm teaching Chinese 1, so my students only, right now it's only learning 1 month. What level of students you think it would be better to use this level up village? Because I see your level 2 is already, your level first one is already go to novice high. So is that, do you want a higher level students to start out?
Yes, what I had said before is I think students need to have enough vocabulary and structures to be able to express themselves on the topic. But, maybe not October, but maybe by March, your students would be able to, because with Mandarin Chinese, there's it's not very difficult to acquire it orally. The difficulty would be comprehending the written prompt. And so if you worked with the students on that, I don't see why you could not do the lowest level in second semester.
So those package you can use any time of the year, just as long as that's teachers required, right?
Well,
depends on the teacher.
We use the cohort model when we're working with Latin America and, for example, with Senegal. But if you are bringing your own partner, you can do it anytime you and your partner agree.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No, that's awesome. And you all have the contact information. If you cannot find Jen, you can find me. Mine is always on the website. So yeah, thank you everybody for attending the webinar, and let's enjoy our dinner and the evening. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Adios.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.